Hi, I'm Ryan Castle. Welcome to the Level 10 Leaders Podcast. We're going to be breaking down the systems, habits, and mindset shifts used by EOS leaders to crush their growth goals and achieve Level 10 success. If you're a visionary, integrator, or leader of a fast-growing team, this podcast is going to get you to 100% strong. Hit subscribe, stay tuned, and let's get started on the journey to learn, lead, and level up. Ron Higgs, welcome along to the Level 10 Leaders Podcast. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Oh, thanks for having me, as am I. It's been great to be invited for this, sharing the power tip, and I'm glad you liked the power tip enough to invite me back to for this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, Ron, your power tip was great. And of course, our listeners can find that on the podcast stream and we'll put a link to it below. But it was very much dialed in on how visionaries communicate or maybe miscommunicate a lot of the time and how they can think about their communication style when they're opening up. A couple of minutes of absolute wisdom. So encourage our listeners to get onto that power tip, and we might unpack some of it in our longer form conversation today. But Ron, as a way of getting started, let me ask you some fast fact questions. We like to do this to get the audience to know you a little bit. First up, are you a breakfast or dinner guy?
That's a hard one, but let's go with dinner.
Okay. Is it a hard one because you love both?
Yes, it is, and I do love both.
That's great. Food can be such an important part of our enjoyment on the way through. On holiday, Ron, would we find you doing something adventurous like bungee jumping, or would you be on the pool lounger with a good book?
Well, actually, I'll be at the pool bar.
I'll join you there. What would you be ordering?
Well, sometimes before noon, it's too early for beer. So maybe, one of those frozen drinks before noon, and then I'll ease my way into beer later.
Yeah, a little bit of frozen margarita. Yeah, I like that
Those
style.
are good too, but as long as it's not too sweet.
What's your preferred learning style, Ron? Do you like to read? Do you like video content? Do you like podcasts, books? What's your vibe?
Yes. So it just depends. Sometimes, you know how we probably all have done this, spending time in traffic. My favorite thing to do in traffic is to listen to a podcast. And for long drives, do the mix between music and podcast and, seeing what's going on in the world and things like that. But I do like to absorb things. And it just depends on what it is. But listening, talking, reading, I mean, all of it. It just, they all have their place.
They do. And it sounds like you're a sponge for all knowledge.
That is my passion, is learning.
Brilliant. Yes. Sounds like you're in a good role for that passion.
For sure.
Cats or dogs, Ron?
Dogs.
Nice. Do you have a dog currently?
My wife and I have a golden doodle, and she's a handful.
She rules the roost?
Of course she does.
Love that. And routine-wise, are you an early riser or a night owl?
Definitely an early riser. As you get older, it's like, wow, man, it's 9:30. I'm getting tired. But I can't go to bed. It's 9:30, so I'll just wait till 10.
Really push the boat out.
Well, I live in Seattle, Pacific Northwest. It's light at 9:30 in the summertime.
Yes.
But it's completely dark at 5 o'clock in the wintertime. So it's
yeah. Well, we're heading to the right zone, heading into some summertime, so that's good.
Yeah.
Entertainment, Ron, if you're watching a movie, what genre would it be? Would it be thriller, comedy, drama? Maybe you're a rom-com guy. What is it?
Negative, sir. Not much of that. Again, they all have their place, but probably some of the more exciting stuff, action stuff. I'm a science fiction fan, a big science fiction fan. I like the Star Wars, Star Trek, all of that stuff, and some of the Marvel movies and DC movies. I watch all of those because I read some of those comic books when I was a kid. So that's exciting stuff because when you were so much younger, you couldn't imagine that they could make a movie and bring these characters to life. And now with the capabilities that they have, it's fascinating from the point of just like, I wonder how they did that, to watching some of the things that you saw in the pages of a comic book as a kid come to life. That I think is cool.
Indeed. And Ron, we're going to talk a little bit about your background, of which a significant part was being in the Navy, and you're a naval aviator. Did you ever experience a UFO while you were out flying?
Interesting question. So yes, I was a Naval Flight Officer, which is a backseater, navigator, weapon systems officer, like Goose in Top Gun, right? But I did better than Goose did. in the Marines.
Yeah, yeah,
But
you're still here with us.
I did have one instance in the middle of the Mediterranean where something flew by and we were not sure what it was. And then, the aircraft carrier has its air traffic control and they have radars and all that stuff. And we called in. It's like, hey, what was that? They're like, what was what?
Oh, so they didn't see it on any of their systems?
No, nobody else saw it, and it just looked weird. I mean, it had some lights on it, but not a pattern of lights that I had ever seen before. We had to maneuver to avoid it,
Wow.
and that was it.
Who
I
knows?
can, to this day, cannot explain what that was.
Wow. That's interesting, and yeah, I generally have a view that it's a ginormous universe out there, and there must be some other living beings in it. Whether yeah they've been in contact with us yet, who knows? Depends who you talk to. But
Yeah, I probably have the same view. Like it was likely something from here that we're not supposed to know about or weren't supposed to know about at the time, but I will still say it was unidentified. I can't explain.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So, Ron, give us a brief tour of your background. You now work Wolf Management Solutions. You do a lot of leadership coaching. You've spent time as a fractional integrator. You've had a naval career. Give us some of the highlights reel.
Well, let's see. I went to Naval Academy. I spent most of my time in the Navy aviation, and I was an aerospace engineering duty officer, which means I was one of the guys working with the defense contractors on current and future military systems. So, aircraft systems, aircraft weapon and sensor systems, and satellite systems. After I got out, I did what a good former military guy would do is I worked for some defense contractors, stayed in that aerospace and defense world. I got to a point where I thought I need to do something different. I, being an academy guy and a guy who has known nothing but the military since I walked into the Naval Academy when I was 17 years old, now I didn't know anything about how people started companies. Just there's a lot. I didn't know anything about nonprofits, all sorts of stuff. So I got involved in the startup community and just by some, meeting people and doing some research, got involved in a couple of startups, kind of proved to myself that my skill set was transferable. So I quit my soul-sucking corporate job without a very good plan. So I called myself a consultant and I did a whole bunch of different things. I ended up through pure luck and networking, getting a job as a COO of a company. Really liked it. And believe it or not, I used my engineering background to really help me with that systems engineering background. I got laid off from that job in 2020, very shortly after I got it because of COVID. And
Right.
I restructured my business as a fractional COO business. I did that, got involved with EOS. I was a fractional EOS integrator. But during that time, I found myself doing a lot of coaching, as I did when I was in the military and in the jobs that I had after the military. And I really liked coaching and really liked guiding and mentoring people. So I decided to just start doing that, move away from the fractional COO stuff and start doing that. And to separate myself from all the other coaches that are out there, I had to pick a niche. So I looked and went, oh, engineers and technical folks. I have an engineering
Sure.
background. I've been
Mhm.
leader of several engineering teams at different levels. And so I think as a coach, I'll just pick working with engineers and technical professionals because I think we do have unique challenges in moving into leadership roles. And a lot of the leadership development programs and practices out there are don't work for people with engineering minds.
Great. And Ron, I'm curious, as we discuss some of your leadership insights, I'd love for us to keep a lens on that engineering and technical because one, it's a passion for our business as well. We work a lot in that zone also. And then I think, as you've identified, there are some unique requirements that people that often have that technical engineering mindset moving to leadership. So let's keep that for the frame for our conversation today. I think that would be really good. Maybe just before we jump to your key leadership insights, Ron, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on moving from a leadership style in military to helping people lead businesses in the public domain, the non-military environment. I feel like there's a misconception out there that in the military you just run around barking orders at people to get things done. Is that how you led in the military?
Well, that's not how anyone leads in the military. And I think a lot of people get that from what they see on TV and the movies. And the difference is this, is that in the military, we have to lead people into situations to where we know everyone might not be coming back. So that's a big difference. So people are not going to follow you because of your positional authority. They will follow you because you've instilled the belief in them, in themselves, in their ability as a unit, and in you as a leader. So that's the big difference. Now, there are some other things too. I think in the military, we all took an oath. We all were trained, and we know what the training is, and we know how everyone else has been trained. And the fact that they're standing, if I'm in a squadron, I know, and I'm looking at somebody wearing wings, I know what they went through to earn those wings. So there's a level of inherent trust that may not be present in the corporate world. But
Sure.
for the most part, the leadership principles are still the same.
Okay, that's great, and let's maybe unpack some of those key principles or insights. Maybe Ron, could you share your top three insights, and then we might unpack those in a bit more detail.
Yeah, sure thing. So the first thing is I think you have to be open. Be open. I know that's sort of a general statement, but that is open to learning, open to other perspectives, open to learning more about yourself, open to being wrong and learning from it. And so the biggest thing I think is just to be open to those other perspectives. And it's all about everyone thinks that the way they do something, sorry, with the generalizations, a lot of people think that the way they do something is the way you have to do it. And when you're training people and working with other people and leading people, you have to do this my way. And I think you have to be open in a leadership role to learning. I can learn from anyone. And I think in my position doesn't matter, my level of education doesn't matter. There's something every other human being that I encounter knows that I don't and that I could learn from. So that's the be open part.
Yeah, like that.
So the next one is building relationships is key. It really is. If you're in a leadership role, you have to build relationships with people, and it has to come from a position of genuine curiosity about other human beings because different human beings are motivated by different things. And in order to know what those things are, you have to build a relationship with that person. And I think you have to build the relationship one before you can connect with them. And then the next part is inspiring them as a leader to do something, right? And then once you connect and inspire them, then you're truly leading. So that building relationships part really is, I think it's key to leadership.
Yeah, great. And I look forward to unpacking that one a bit more with you. And the final of your three insights there.
The last one is this, expect the unexpected. This comes from, I think we should all know that, but sometimes just hearing someone else articulate it is going like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, for me, it's one of those things that really came from aviation. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, which I guess we'll talk about later, I have a series of posts that I do called Leadership Lessons from Aviation. And the basis is this. In aviation, when you get into an airplane, there are so many variables beyond your control that you have to expect the unexpected. Aircraft are very complex. The aircraft itself, the behavior of the aircraft itself, again, beyond your control. Just like your car, you're driving your car down the street and something happens, lights start going off. I mean, beyond your control. You have to expect that because airplanes are much more complex than your car. The weather is a big variable. It is, sometimes does not develop as forecast. Different weather in different places, as we're seeing now. So the weather
Yes.
is certainly a variable that is beyond your control. Air traffic control, again, beyond your control. They may tell you to do something that you had no idea that doesn't go along with your plan. And if you're a combat environment in the military, The enemy is certainly not going to cooperate with anything you think they may do. And there's some others, but just in general, you have to expect that and plan for it. Some of those contingencies, it's like, well, okay, if I lose an engine in this spot, I can land here. I mean, some of those things we talk about in the brief, but overall, I think if you expect the unexpected, then you're not going to freeze when things happen and not know what to do. You can have some contingency planning and move forward and decide whether or not you can still reach your destination, whether you can go to an alternate destination, just like that, but you're not going to freeze. So I think you should always expect the unexpected.
Quick break. If you're serious about scaling your EOS business, listen up. Here's the truth. Most companies stall because their managers can't lead. We built a system to fix it. At Level 10 Leaders, we turn managers into leaders so you can step back, scale up, or sell with confidence. Here's a quick win. Take 3 minutes to get a data-driven report of your team's LMA, leadership, management, and accountability strength. Uncover your biggest growth gaps. Take the LMA quiz now at lvl10.us/LMA. It's fast, and it'll show you exactly where your team's getting stuck. Let's get back into the podcast.
I was in a session yesterday with someone presenting around negotiation skills, and they were very big on low stakes practice. So before you go and negotiate in a business context, a really high stakes deal or something, actually practice on some low stakes thing. Practice on how you negotiate or interact with the valet at the hotel that you go to, or the server at your restaurant. And I don't necessarily mean about trying to beat them down on price, but just the way you build relationships and rapport and some of the things you're talking about. In your experience, Ron, with this expecting the unexpected, how do you, maybe could you share some examples, both from a military and a business context, of how people can get ready for the unexpected, both through practice or training or skill development?
Well, one of them is to just think of contingencies. When when I went into the business world, I guess I always took this with me. It's like, well, what if this happens? So what if we lose our top salesperson and they take their relationships with them? What if things go sideways with this customer that's responsible for 35% of our business? What if this? Now, COVID proved to all of us that you can't what if everything, because who would have come up with that? But it was disruptive enough. But those people who were practiced at going, what if this happens? What if this happens? Probably had an easier time adjusting to the COVID rules than people that were just outright, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And they froze. So I think just going through some of those scenarios and some of the easiest scenarios that could do it. So for
And
me, even at home, I go, okay, what if my electricity goes out? What if my cable goes out? And it's happened to me. It's like, okay, I've got a Starbucks down the street. I'm going to pack up my laptop, boom, go down to Starbucks. You know, some things you could do on your phone. If I need to let people know I'm going to be late, but if I'm in a meeting, then I'm going to run down to Starbucks, get set up there, and go. Right. So it's some of
sure.
those easy things to plan, but you can always for an engineering team, start asking the what ifs questions. So when it does happen, you can start implementing your alternate plans immediately.
Sure. And Ron, how would you encourage a business leader to think about getting the right balance of this? Because you can what if your scenarios into a dark hole of going, oh wow, I just spent all of my time thinking about all the things that could go wrong, and maybe I need to balance that with how can we keep our best customer that is 35% of our client base, not focused just on the what if we lose them, the same about your salesperson, example. So how would you encourage leaders to think about finding that balance between the what if and how can we?
Well, in the engineering world, there are two parts to risk. One part is the probability of occurrence, and the second part is the severity of occurrence. And so those things with high probability and high consequences were the things that you think first. The things with low probability and low consequences, no. But if you start with the ones that are most likely to occur, or the ones that would have the most severe consequences because you could literally spend a long time. So you're right, you do have to do that balance. But just thinking of those two things will make it so you can have that balance and not spend all of your time coming up with these scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's a great frame. And when we have a skill that's around making better decisions, we use a very similar frame to get people to think about severity and likelihood or probability as well. And it's amazing how just that very simple frame can take something that feels like a lot of noise in your environment, and you can immediately, for some of those, go, you know, we just don't need to worry about that, right? Because
Right.
its likelihood of happening is low, and even if it did, it wouldn't be a killer blow to us. So I think that's a really good frame to think about the what ifs, but then put them in that kind of priority order.
But
I
just
like that a lot.
understanding in general the variables that are beyond your control, even
Mm,
just an understanding of all the things that are beyond your control. And then the things that are beyond your control, what you can control is what how you react to it.
yeah. And I'm curious about that react bit, Ron. When something goes wrong, do you have technique or skill that you encourage people to use in that very first moment when something's going wrong, to get them, you know, out of the fight or flight mode, maybe, and into the frontal cortex and actually thinking logically about these things? Do you have a technique that you would encourage people to use in that moment of emotion?
Well, there's a difference between reacting and responding. And so if it is one of the scenarios that you came up with, it's like, I thought this might happen, then you can respond because you've put some thought into what's going to happen. Sometimes when you react, that's emotional, that's quick, and that's something you're going to do without thinking too much about it. It all depends on the situation. Is there a fire? You're going to have to react to that. Is it, is there a bunch of water? Okay, you can respond to that maybe because it's not as urgent. So I
Sure.
think it just depends on the urgency of the situation.
And when you think about this from your aviation career, you know, dealing with the unexpected, what comes to mind is a situation you had where something very unexpected happened to you and you had to deal with it?
An aircraft fire, an engine fire, immediately. But those are the things we're like, hey, what if the engine catches on fire? We actually practice that. And then we have procedures in the aircraft. So we have procedures that what we call immediate action procedures, which are things you have to memorize. You don't have
Yes.
time to break out a book and read when something's on fire. But you do. So there's, say there's 10 steps to, taking care of it. The first four may be the ones you have to memorize and do immediately, and then open up the book that tells you what to do beforehand.
Mm,
So there's a difference in how you respond. So the fire was, oh, engine's on fire. First thing we need to do is put it out. And this could actually be a long conversation, right? Because the first thing they teach us in aviation is something called aviate, navigate, communicate, which are your priorities. And those are your priorities, which is aviate, keep the airplane in the air, navigate, you keep, don't fly it into a mountain while you're doing it, but decide whether or not you can continue to your destination or you're going to have to land immediately or turn around and go back to where you came from or whatever it is, right? And then communicate. And those are your priorities. So when everything hits you at once. So our priority was getting the fire out. Okay, we got a fire out, but we have to shut the engine down. It's two engine aircraft. Now we're flying on one engine. That's an emergency. So now where are we? Can we continue to our destination? There are lots of factors involved, and then let's talk to ATC, let them know what's going on. So that was one of the things, and it worked beautifully. We ended up continuing. We were close enough to the destination to be able to continue to the destination, we successfully extinguished the fire and landed at the destination. So something that you would think would be, oh my goodness, you're in an airplane that's on fire, the engine's on fire, right? But we were able to get the fire out, control it so it didn't become too catastrophic. And the airplane itself is smart enough to, or designed well enough to where if you do the things that you're supposed to, you're not going to have an uncontrollable fire.
right.
And
And Ron, were you landing back on an aircraft carrier in that instance,
no,
or were
this
you?
was luckily we were land based, and again lots of variables. So when you're flying off of the carrier, there's something we do called blue water operations, which means there you are so far out in the ocean you cannot get to any place to land. And the
Sure.
other one is obviously you're close enough to land. So if you're in blue water ops, you have no choice. You're going to come and land the airplane back of the carrier. If you can't land it, you're going to ditch it close to the carrier, which is something nobody wants to do. But if you're close
No.
to land, we always have these emergency fields that we have picked out. It's like, can you make it to that field? Can you take it to another one? So there's, again, all those variables, all what to expect. This one, no, worked out well. We were flying over land based. But we ended up on the ground now with an airplane that needed to be repaired. And
Yeah.
so, but those are all secondary things. So we ended up having to spend a week on the ground. They had to get people to come and fix the airplane, and it all worked out.
Good result from yeah, potentially
Absolutely.
very
Yeah.
very dangerous situation. And I think that's a good context for business, is that so often in business we do have time to take a breath. It's very rarely the situation we have is truly catastrophic or life-threatening in a business context. So the ability to slow down, evaluate the situation, do the equivalent of where else could we land this? What do
Yeah.
we need to do right now to contain the current situation? But we tend to have the benefit of time in a business context compared to what you're dealing with in the military.
Let me add one thing in terms of business. Now, when I started consulting, one of my first consulting clients, I went to him and said, "Hey, what are you going to do if somebody gets hurt?" They all look at each other. What's the first phone call you're going to make? It's going to happen. So in the Navy, we had what's called a mishap plan in our squadron. So if we lost an aircraft, there's a book that you pull out, and the book says, "Step one, do this. Step two, do that," because it's an emotional moment. Could have been one of your friends, your crew, your best friend, whatever the case may
Sure.
be, but we just lost an aircraft and some people. And so that's an emotional moment, and you need guidance in those moments. You can't afford to make it up as you go along. And so one of the things in business, especially for people out there in factories and running around where people could get injured, is to have, I convinced them, I was like, you need to have this. You need to have a book that says, who does what, where's the first call you make, to whom, when, and an order of what happens if somebody gets hurt, because the last thing you want is for someone's family to find out that they've been injured, on the news or
Yes.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, or someone prioritizes calling the leader of the company instead of 911, or some kind of
Yeah.
scenario like that. Ron, thank you for that. Let's go back to being open and coming with a sense of curiosity. Is this like a skill that can be learned, curiosity, or is that just some people are more curious than others? How do you see that play out?
I think some people are more curious than others. It's one of those things. If you've ever been in a position to interview people, for me, I look at things that you can't teach. And to me, on that list, you can't teach motivation, you can't teach willingness and or ability to learn, which is curiosity. You can't teach work ethic, things like that. So, you build your questions around your values and some of those things that you can't teach for, because if you're looking for a programmer, okay, there's thousands of programmers that could fit the bill. How do you know the one for you? So long answer to your question, but I just think curiosity is something that people have come with. I guess you can teach them. I know some practical applications of their curiosity is like, here's how you could be more curious. And I deal with this when working with engineers. And I think one of the challenges that engineers had, I know I had it, is most engineers are introverts. And the last thing you want to do when you move into a people management role is deal with the people stuff. But you have to do it.
Yeah.
But you have to be genuinely curious about those people. So I guess I'm giving you both answers, right? And so, but you can, even if you're not naturally curious, I guess you can teach it, but you really have to focus on it and try hard at it. Because again, the engineers that I work with, I'm like, hey, start building relationships with the people that work for you. And we write down some questions and we write down some things, and it's like, do not, under any circumstances, look at the piece of paper and go, okay, what are your hopes and dreams? You know what I mean? It has to
Hey,
flow
you got to start
naturally.
somewhere. And I think if we continue with that frame of engineers, and again, we're using generalizations, tend to be more introverted by nature, which is introversion is more about where you get your energy from.
Yes.
So introverts tend to get a lot of energy by being by themselves. It's what often makes great engineers that they can put their head down, work entirely contained in their own little zone, and come up with great work. But when you're obviously having to interact with people, it's why some of the challenge can be is that they feel that draining, working with,
Right.
interacting with others. Um, and how do you help them think about that scenario of not everything in the world is black and white? And I'll share a quick story. We're working with an engineering company, and after we'd been working with them for a while, the owner of that company said, "Wow, this is amazing! You're teaching our engineers to think with some color." Because everything their decision was always a yes or no, black or white, right or wrong kind of thing, and actually letting them lean into the color. So, how can you use or think about curiosity to move into that color zone, not just black or white?
Well, one is being open and being willing to learn from anyone, again, that I talked about. And some of us, especially engineers, perfection. This is the way you do it. This is their way, is the way they do it, the way they tend to teach people. However, there's more than one way to do things right, as we all know. And I use this as a silly example. It's boiled eggs. How do you boil an egg? I want a soft boiled egg. How do you do it? There are lots of different ways to get to a soft boiled egg, right? There's all sorts of, you go on Amazon, right? There's all sorts of machines out there now that'll boil your eggs
Totally.
for you. You poke a little hole in it, put it in this thing, and it does, whatever. So there's a lot of these things. The idea is to talk about the end state and the outcome. I want a soft boiled egg. And not, hey, I want an egg, or cook me a breakfast, or cook me an egg, right? That's not enough, right? I want a soft boiled egg. And the end result, the outcome is a soft boiled egg. How you get there, totally up to you. And if you're being open, you can watch someone, even someone new, even if you've had 20 years of experience and somebody walks in there fresh out of college, they could do something and you just look at it and go, okay, what'd you just do there? That's awesome. I've never even thought of that, never seen that. And you can learn from someone. So again, that's that curiosity, being open in everything and waiting for someone to show you something that you haven't thought of.
And there are so many great examples of that.
Yeah.
And in organizations, people that have deep expert knowledge in a zone that you don't have, and that expert knowledge doesn't mean to say they've got a PhD in it. It might be they've been working the forklift in the warehouse for the last 7 years, and they've observed some things that could be done better. And if you just give them the opportunity to share, how could we do this better? They often have incredible ideas of what to do, and that's the curiosity piece, right? Of working with the other members of your team to go, how could we do this better? What could be a better outcome?
Yeah.
So
What
yeah,
have you seen here that I'm not? Because I don't know. I'm a big believer in, have you seen the iceberg of ignorance?
I have not.
You have to look at it. It basically
Okay,
says that the gist is the higher you're up in the organization, the less you know about all the issues. And so the
sure.
executives in the organization know 4% of all the issues in the organization, yet they're the ones solving or tasked to sort of resolve all of the issues. And basically, the higher you get up, the less you know. But the individual contributor level, they know 100% of what's going on in the organization. So how do you
Yeah.
get that communication? How are you able to get as much information as you can about the real issues from the people experiencing them so that you can make the best decisions to move the organization forward?
Mm. And have a system of execution around that, because what I've seen fail terribly in organizations is when they, one, have that realization that other people have some better insights. So they then go and ask those people, but then they have no system of executing the suggested improvements. So then that just becomes a major culture impact because that person goes, hey, you asked me what to solve, I told you, and now nothing's happened about it. It's like, it's an absolute culture killer.
You're 100% right. I remember being in a company quarterly. We had quarterly offsites in which we would go through these exercises and we would raise all of these issues and we would never hear anything about them. The next quarter, we would do the same thing over again. And after doing this twice, I raised my hand and go, you're giving us, it seems like you're giving us the illusion of input here. like that you're going through the motions of look, it's like, hey, see, we're taking your feedback. But to this day, I've been through two of these things, and you guys haven't done anything with any of the things that we've done. You haven't even come back and reported on what we did, what we talked about the last time and how it was implemented. You just, so now we're just doing the same thing. So I don't want, because I think this is a waste of my time, so it's not going anywhere. And so I experienced that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So we were able to get them to the first thing that they covered at the beginning of every one of these quarterly offsites was the things that we covered prior and the status.
Nice. So I think that's a good example of those leaders were somewhat open and somewhat curious that they were able to take that feedback that you gave and then adjusted the path for a better outcome. It may not have been perfect, but it sounded like progress.
It did, and it was a blind spot because maybe they didn't see it themselves. And I was fairly new. So, the perspectives of someone new, you could just ask the question and go, hey, well, why do we do that? And the perspectives of new people are valuable. And I use that. Just like, hey, I'm new here.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Just curious.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we doing this? What's
Yeah,
the outcome we're achieving?
exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Ron, take us to bring us home, take us into the Connect, Inspire, Lead framework that you have. How can, again, with this engineering technical frame, how do people start the connection piece other than looking down at their paper going, hey, what are your hopes and dreams?
But again, that's genuine curiosity. And so I'll give you an example. And finding the right place to connect. An example is I walked into someone's cube and they had a picture of a 1966 Mustang Fastback. And I said, oh, a 1966 Mustang Fastback. It's like, oh, how'd you know that? It's like, well, because I have a 1965 coupe.
Oh, nice.
And boom, we were Mustang brothers.
Yeah,
Whatever the case may be. And then we chatted a little bit about Mustangs and car shows and all that other stuff. Boom, connection, right? So now I've got the connection. Now, all of our conversations weren't about that, but this person saw me as like, okay, this guy's just a, normal guy, not just, just the next knucklehead to come in and be my boss. Um, and there's other things too. Also on the person's desk was a picture of him and two boys with a baseball team hat on, standing in front of a stadium. I knew they were baseball fans. I knew what team. I know that he had at least two boys. Um, Other things, looking at pictures, looking at people's surroundings, finding the right people or the right thing to connect with. So you can connect either by common knowledge, common interests, some person in common, or things like that. But it's not, you just can't force it. Like, hey, we both work here. We
yeah,
have that in
sure.
common. And so
Mm.
it's genuinely about being curious and just learning to look at some of the cues and the things around to find some way to connect with that person. And again, you can talk about anything. You could talk about the weather, you could talk about the traffic, you can kind of ask, where they live or something like that, or a place you visited. It's even like, oh, you know what? I grew up in that area. You went to a rival high school. Do they still do the blah, blah, blah? That stuff.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
it's just about finding that right place to connect. And I think
Yeah.
once you connect, then in terms of leadership, inspire them to do something, to get to the end state together, looking at what the
Sure.
company's mission is or what your strategic goals are. You have to inspire them somehow to meet those goals.
I just want to round out the connect. I think sometimes you will find someone where there's not an obvious connection point. There's no natural connection like you're both into Mustangs. I found a really great frame is just asking people what they love to do when they're not at work or what
Yeah.
brings them joy when they're not at work.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't have to be the same thing that you're into, but suddenly they feel like you see them as a human and you're interested in them in more than what they can deliver on the
Right.
project. And you've got to be genuine about that. You can't be, as you're saying, you can't be false or disingenuous about those
Right.
questions. But it's a good place to start with engaging with people.
And there will be some that just want to keep it professional, or they shoot back. It's like, my personal business is my business. I'm not interested in talking to you about it. Okay, you seem to be a straight shooter, which I love. So tell me what you think is wrong here. Let's just go
Yeah,
right to,
nice.
what are the
Yeah, I
things
love
that
it.
we can do better? What's wrong? What's that? And then you get into that conversation about you go that, and then because people who are like that tend to be the people that think everything is screwed up and they know how to unscrew it. Right? It's like, okay, so tell me the thing you think is the most screwed up, and your suggestions on unscrew it. So why is that important to you? Right? And so then you can kind of get to some of the things that motivate them through that way. Right? So
Mm,
there's even a way to deal with people who are a little bit difficult in that respect.
okay. And Ron, how do you tackle the inspire piece? Because maybe our company makes widgets, it doesn't save orphans, it doesn't fix the world hunger problem. It's like we make widgets, we make really good widgets, but we kind of make widgets. How do you connect inspiration in that situation?
The company does have a mission, right? And a vision, some sort of mission and some sort of vision. And I have to think that working towards that is a good goal for some people. But ultimately, then, if that's the case, some people are motivated by money, right? What are we doing here? Right. And so here's what this is going to allow us to do. We increase company revenue, right? We more money. We've got more money for bonuses. We've got enough money to make it, buy that foosball table to do, that everybody likes to do, whatever. So you could always go back to figuring out what does inspire them. And a lot of that I can go through. You can have through your compensation discussions, you can really find out what's important to people. Is it money? Is it bonus? Is it work-life balance? Is it uh, PTO? Is it the ability to work from home? Whatever it is, right? So during those compensation discussions are a great place to find out what motivates someone, and then you can use what motivates them to inspire them.
Yeah. And particularly in the engineering field, it might be like, if we could get this next piece of equipment, that would allow me to do this, building the widget that much better, faster, quicker, more efficiently. And that might be the thing that inspires them the most,
Right.
not the more pay or PTO. It is like, I just
Right.
love doing a great job. And if I could get some like technical, more tech capability into the business,
Right.
then that would be the thing that would light my fire. And
And
I'm also
challenges is a big one
yeah.
too.
And what I'm hearing you say, Ron, is the key for a leader is to think about how you inspire each individual, because we are all individuals and we're different humans, rather than going, hey, I'll come up with one general inspirational thing and that'll work for everyone. I'm going to give, everyone a gift card once a month. It's like there'll be, 9 out of 10 people on your team who are like, hey, it's kind of nice, but it doesn't inspire me. So
Goes back to the
every individual.
relationship piece,
Correct.
right? Building relationship piece.
Yeah. Okay. And then, what are a couple of the leadership skills that you've seen most useful for your people that have come from a very technical frame into a people leadership frame?
Well, again, let's say in general, people skills are really, and it's funny, it's a generalization because most folks I know, it's like, oh man, engineers, usually don't have people skills. That may be because what we talked about, right, which is the tend to lean towards introversion, where you get a lot of energy from yourself, and then when there are others around, you find it draining. And so that is it can be a challenge for anyone.
I think there's a misconception, and this is well proven through research, that all great leaders are front of the room, Yahoo, let's go conquer the world people. And research just proves time and time again that it's not the case. Sometimes the very most or the most effective leaders are the ones that are the quiet talkers, maybe don't talk a lot, but when they talk, they're worth listening to. So there's no one leadership style that is successful, and people don't have to reinvent themselves into someone they're not to be a good people leader. They just have to embrace the skills they have and then maybe develop some new ones, because these are skills that
Right.
can be learned.
I think if you understand your values, but you should also understand that your value as you step into a leadership role from that of being an individual contributor is now to start to get the team working better, to inspire people, to grow people. And you as a leader as an individual contributor, you are judged on how good of an individual contributor you are, great engineer. As a leader, now you're going to be judged on how well your team performs, how well you grow and develop others, and all of those things. And a lot of times, you can't give the answers. You have to let folks figure things out themselves. And that's hard. It's hard to let go. But again, you have to figure out your style, but that style has to be within the bounds of you being a people leader, which means you have some strategic responsibility now. You have some responsibility to build relationships and interact with other stakeholders. So if you're the leader of an engineering team, so now we're an engineering manager, but now you have to start dealing with HR, finance, production, accounting, everybody else. Right? And so your world has just become a lot bigger. So you have to start having more of a big picture and understanding that is part of your leadership too, because you're strategic. But you, like you said, you have to figure out what style you're going to
Yeah.
use. And to me, I've heard the term servant leader. I've heard all sorts of leadership terms. To me, everything, and I know there's a definition for adaptive leadership, but for me, everything is adaptive. You have to adapt to the situation and to the individuals. Because there's some individuals that are probably more capable than you that goes, hey, well, Ryan's got it. Ryan will be all over this. I trust him implicitly. Maybe there's somebody else that's like, Ron, I'm gonna have to tell him what to do and hold his hand through this whole time. Uh, so again, it just depends on the person and the situation that you have to adapt to.
Yeah, indeed. Hey, Ron, thank you for sharing those insights. And if I could just summarize them, the first one, be open, bring lots of curiosity to your leadership role, build relationships, and you do that by connecting with people first, looking for ways to inspire them, and so you can lead. And the expect the unexpected, because the best laid plans, only that they're just plans, and there'll be things beyond your control that come up that you have to deal with. So I think they're really great frames for leaders to think about, and that they could take some action straight away and go and start doing those things in their leadership role. So, Ron, thank you for sharing those with us today. It's been a really enjoyable conversation, and I like how practical these things are that you've talked about. I can really see how they're applicable in the part of the market that you focus in. So, thanks for joining us.
Ryan, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed our conversation. Hope to have one again sometime in the future.
Sure will. Thanks, Ron.
Disclaimer: Level 10 Leaders is an independent podcast and leadership development platform. It is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by EOS Worldwide LLC. EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Level 10 Meeting, and related trademarks are trademarks of EOS Worldwide and are used here for informational purposes only. Thanks for tuning in to Level 10 Leaders. If today's episode hit home, here's what you need to do. Take the LMA quiz. Go to lvl10.us/LMA. It's fast and reveals what's holding you back. Hit subscribe and share this with one person who needs to break through the ceiling and crush their growth goals. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll show you exactly how to level up to level 10.